Assalamu alaikum, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Hello guys, today we are going to start our second video in which we will learn how to write our first program in JavaScript, followed by a brief session on variables and data types in JavaScript. Let's see what are the basics to write a program in JavaScript. First concept we will learn is internal JavaScript. As the name suggests, it is writing JavaScript code inside HTML. How can we do this? We will do this by placing our code inside these script tags. These script tags then go inside head or body section of the HTML file. They can also go inside both of these sections. For example, this is a script block number 1, this is a script block number 2, and we have the option that we can place it in head or body section. So using probability we can come up with the number of combinations that how can we place these two scripts inside the HTML file. We will use probability and combinatorics with replacement so that we have two options for the first place and two options for the second place. So by multiplying we get 4. It means that we can place our first script in head and second in also head. Body H, B or BH. I think you are now familiar with how we can find combinations about how to place our first script or second script inside the given two of the sections. Now we will see a working code example to further solidify our concept about internal JavaScript. Need to install live server extension which will help us initiate our local dev server so that we don't have to reload our live scripts in browser. Code changes will reflect back in the browser. You need to press Ctrl Shift and X and type live server in the search bar. It has appeared in the top of the list. You have to press the install button. It has been installed. Let's close this and come towards the example part. I have created a code examples folder already. This example1.html is our file in which we are going to demonstrate and practice internal JavaScript. This is the basic structure of a HTML file, and with head and body sections and a title. Let's create two buttons with certain IDs and assign them click listeners also. Let's replicate it and use it to create a second button with different ID and click listener. We need to add some styling to buttons to look and make them more presentable. For this we need to add styles to our style section in the head We can reference our button by just typing their IDs with the hash appended at the very beginning of the ID string. We need to assign some attribute and values to set color, padding, margin, etc. For padding, we can set 5px and 5px, and for font size we can set it to be 5px, and also margin needs to be set let's copy this and do the same for the second button. Try changing the color so that the buttons don't look similar. Also assigned some text to these buttons so that buttons are recognizable. Let's open it with live server and look how these buttons look now. These buttons are looking nice and are clickable. Okay, let's move forward with the scripting side. As we have discussed, we can add scripts to head section or in body section. Firstly, we will add a script to the head section. How can we do this? We will do this by creating functions and setting some certain property like background color of the button. Get element by ID. Now we have to fetch that first button ID and dot style because it's a CSS thing, and background color. It was blue in the beginning, we can make it yellow when clicked. Let's copy this and recreate this for the second button. The second button has ID 2 and it has initial color purple. Now we can set it to gray. Let's see the script in the browser. Now when I click it, the color has changed. When I click this button, the color has changed. Now we have demonstrated that these scripts written in the head section work perfectly fine. Now let's change this script section and move it to the body section and see what happens. Let's reload. Okay, the color has changed. No problems with it. We have seen there are no issues when you write scripting JavaScript scripts in your body or head section. Let's try the other two scenarios to close this practice example up. We'll now move this function 1 to the head and keep this function 2 in the body section. Let's cut it and paste it here. Let's add a script tag. Now I will test again if things are working fine or not. Script tag in place, script block in place. Now let's move towards the browser. Working fine. This is also working fine. Now let's interchange this. And move this part here. And again go to the browser and check the buttons again. They are working fine. So what we see is you can write your scripts in body and head or in both of the section, and we have practically demonstrated that approach in our coding example. So now, given any number of scripts, you can try any combination and try writing your script blocks in any section such as body or head or in both. We will discuss external JavaScript. It is actually writing code in your .js files and referencing them in the HTML code. It is by far the most preferred method over internal JavaScript. It is preferred because it allows code reusability and segregation of HTML and JavaScript code Also, caching of JavaScript files allows faster loading of pages. For instance, we have a abc.js file that comprises of a function that has some functionality to change color of a HTML element. One thing we have to note here is when you write external JavaScript file, you don't have to include script tag. You can then reference it in your HTML file like this by writing the path to your file and enclosing it in script tags. This block then can be written in the head section or in the body section, or if you have a number of script files, it can go in both. Now we will discuss a working code example to demonstrate this concept further. Okay, let's start with our second example. We have two separate files for our HTML code and JavaScript code. We will write our JS code in this file and HTML code in this file. We will make use of our code written in example 1 and will help us in writing code for external JavaScript example. Let's open example1.html and try copying it, all of its content, and paste it in your example2.html. Please change this internal to external JS. As we are moving the script blocks to a separate .js file, we don't need them in this file. We will copy both of them there. Let's see what happens. Firstly, we will remove these two entire blocks as we have pasted them in example2.js file. Now let's move forward and remove these script tags because we don't need them in the .js files. Save it, and we are just one step behind from achieving external JavaScript functionality. We have to reference our script file by giving the path in the source attribute. You can give it in body or head, any section of your choice. Either way will work. Let's save this and try opening our HTML example2.html with live server to see if things are working or not. Let's try this button out. Button 1 has been working. Button 2 is also working. So the idea and the approach we discussed about external JavaScript is valid, as we can change the color of the button by moving the script blocks to another file with .js extension and referencing this .js file in your HTML code like this. So now we are done with the working code example of external JavaScript. Now we will move forward to other concepts. Okay, now we will discuss the use case of useStrict in JavaScript. It is placed at the top of script you want to use in top of the script. What it will do is it will make JavaScript run the modern way at the top of the script. Script runs the modern way. It catches for coding mistakes and unsafe actions. For example, you have a abc.script file. You place useStrict like this at the top. What it will do is it will not let you assign a value to an undeclared variable, and also this operation will not succeed that you first define a variable y and then try to delete it. Same is the case with functions, that you first declare a function and then try deleting it. useStrict will not allow it. And functions having same parameters or arguments like x and x in this case, useStrict will not allow it. These are a few use cases where useStrict can help us catch coding mistakes and unsafe actions. We will cover a practice coding example for useStrict to demonstrate this concept better. Move towards the example we have created for useStrict. The example 3.html and example 3.js is the file we are going to use for our demonstration and working code example of useStrict. If you can see, I have just imported example 3 and referenced example 3.js in this HTML file. We are going to open example 3.js now to see what is happening here. I have just wrote useStrict at the top of the script to let JavaScript run the modern way. Like see on line number 4, I am assigning a value to undeclared variable. It will not work due to the restriction in strict mode, that you can't assign a value to a variable that is not declared, but it will get bypassed due to modern environments, as it will become a global variable. Similar is the case with this variable, where I have assigned a string to it and try calling it this function in try catch block. I have now initialized a variable x and trying to delete it. It is clearly throwing a error, as you can see the red line underneath it, as it you can't delete a variable like this in strict mode. Same is the case with octal literals. You can't assign octal literals to variables. Similarly, when you assign same arguments to a function, it is not permitted in strict mode. Lastly, that function declaration is there on the 30th line, and when you try to delete that function, it will not allow you to delete this. Let us run this example to see how the console log is behaving. It is working fine. As you can see, the title has printed, but if we see the console log by inspecting the browser, you can see there are two errors. That example.js at 19th line, if we go back to the VS code, we can see the 19th line is this line where we are trying to delete the x variable. That's how use strict method works in JavaScript and enables us to catch for common coding mistakes and errors. Now we are done with the explanation of coding example of use strict. We will move forward to JavaScript variables and data types. So JavaScript variable, what are these? These are nothing but named storage for data. But one thing we have to note here, that JavaScript variables are case sensitive. Like we declare a variable with this name myvar, and we go on and declare a second variable like this. These are not the same. These are distinct variables, and they are going to be considered distinct. It will be counted as one and it will be counted as second variable. To determine the type of a certain variable, you call type of, like type of x, let x be a string with OK string stored in it. That's how case sensitivity and type of determines the type of variables in JavaScript. There are 4 ways about how you can work with variables in JavaScript. First, we will see the undeclared variables. Undeclared variable, that you are not going to declare a variable first. You will just assign a value to the variable and it gets declared. But this approach does not work when you use strict. It is prohibited. Secondly, the var comes in place, which was used for old version browsers. Now let has replaced var. Var being replaced by let. As it was used in old browsers, now let is used widely in newer versions. It replaced var, and if you don't have to use constant, then you can go for let and declare your variables with let, like if constant is not needed. We will see why we need constant to declare our variables. This is an example. We declare a name variable and store a name Ali as a string in it. Lastly, constant. Constant comes with the advantage that you can't change value and type of a variable once it is declared with constant at its beginning. Like you have declared a variable pi with constant, now you can't change 3.14 and assign it any other value. It will not work. That's the advantage of constant. Let's move towards the JavaScript data types then. Then we will cover a single example covering JavaScript variables and data types. JavaScript data types. JavaScript data type has dynamic typing. Dynamic typing means one variable can hold multiple values, one plus values, more than one values, and the type of the value is determined at runtime. So that is how JavaScript has dynamic typing. JavaScript has total 8 data types, which are further grouped into primitive and non-primitive data types. We will see first these grouping, what does these grouping means, and then we will move forward towards each individual variable. By primitive, what do we mean by it? It means it is immutable, cannot be modified once you created it. But in case of non-primitive, it is mutable. It can be modified once created, like you initialize a object and then this object can be changed in the future. This whole group, as you can see, belongs to the primitive group, primitive data type group, and only object belongs to the non-primitive group. String can be declared with let and can be declared with single quotes, double quotes, or backticks. When you use backticks, we have to embed a expression in our string or a variable in it. We will cover an example that will explain this concept. Moving toward big int, that is a special data type that can hold a arbitrary size int. You just need to place n at the end and you can declare big int like 1, 2, 3, so on. At the end you have to place n. By this you can declare a big int variable. Boolean, as the name suggests, it denotes true and false in the JavaScript. You can declare a false z with a false in it, like this. Null is itself a data type, and it should not be confused with undefined, and it can be assigned to any variable, like let name is equal to null. Number is just a representation for float and integer numbers in JavaScript. It has a 64-bit long floating point number. It is used to represent float and int at the same time. What is undefined data type in JavaScript? It is nothing. If we declare a variable like this and not assign it a value, it will by default have a value undefined. It is undefined data type in JavaScript. Similarly, symbol are nothing but unique identifier or names for objects. We will discuss this in detail in the example. Likewise, objects are the only non-primitive data type in JavaScript. However, we have 7 primitive data types and only one non-primitive data type in JavaScript, that is object. What are objects? It are nothing but name value pairs with which you can declare array using a object, or initialize the object, or you can initialize a date object using the non-primitive data type object. That's how the data types are in JavaScript. We will now cover a single and last example explaining JavaScript data types and variables. We are going to work with our example 4.html file, which is primarily for JavaScript data types and variables. Let's open it. The primary thing we are doing here is we are just referencing and importing example 4.javascript file in it to explain the working of variables and data types. Let's open the example 4.js to see things better. If you can notice here, we have just used var to assign a string and store it in the name variable. One thing to add here is that redeclaration is only possible with var. Like, we can redeclare name variable and assign it a new value, nothing will happen. But if we do the same with let, it will create a problem. Like you can see that this is a problem, cannot redeclare block scoped variable age. If we remove it, things will work fine. So the point I am going to make here is only var can be used to redeclare a variable. Similar is the case with constant. Constant cannot also be used to redeclare variables. Only var can be used. Let us test the property of constant if we can change the value of constant variable or not. Let us save this and run this script with live server. Script is working fine, it has printed that heading, but we have to check console. What is it is saying? It is saying assignment to constant variable at example 4 line number 5. Let's come to the line number 5. What we have done here, we are trying to assign a value to a constant variable, which will not work in JavaScript. Let's remove this and rerun the script. Things are working fine, the error has removed. Okay, let's move forward. We have just console logged the name variable like this, and the age, which is a numeric value like this, and is student, and also coming towards the data types now. Number is what? A numerical number we have stored in a number variable using let. This is how strings are stored in JavaScript, and booleans are stored like this by assigning a true or false. Similarly, we also learned that objects can be used to initialize arrays, objects and dates. Arrays can be initialized like this, and person is a actually object with name value pairs like this. This is the name and value pairs. We can also use a object to initialize the date object. This will give us the current date of the system right now, and let is assigned a null value, and we have declared a undefined var which will give us undefined because we have not assigned it a value. Let's see what happens in the console log when we print out all of these statements. Script is saved, no issues with it. Let's inspect the browser and see the console log. The name John has printed, age 30, a numeric value, is student, a boolean, true, number, a numeric value, 42. Text hello world, a string, is true, a boolean. That is a array we initialize using objects, and it is the person is actually object. Empty is actually assigned a null value, and undefined variable is without a value, that is why it is showing undefined. Lastly, we printed out the date, current date and time. That is why the date is the current date and time in my country right now. That's how things work in JavaScript, and we have clearly demonstrated. As the last thing I want to discuss is the backtick strings in JavaScript. That includes embeddings of variables and expressions. Like we have embedded a variable in this, which are a and b, and we have evaluated expression also by declaring a variable a and b with 5 and 3 values respectively. Let's see the output of this to understand the concept better. Let's open it with live server and inspect the browser to see the console log. As you can see, the sum of 5 and 3 is 8. The variable a and b got substituted here, and the b variable got its position at this got this position after and the sum is displayed here, 8, which is 8 actually. So we have essentially completed all the aspects of how we can work with JavaScript variables and data types. Let's move towards the summary part of this lecture to conclude things up. What is the summaries of today's lecture? We studied internal and external JavaScript, which goes inside head or in body or in both. With external, we allow linking separate files and reference them in our HTML document. We also learned what is usestrict and how it allows us to catch coding mistakes and unsafe actions. Moreover, we learned what are JavaScript variables. These are just name storages, and they can be declared with let and constant. We also studied how to determine type of a variable using type of, and things like case sensitivity of variables and handling undefined variables. Okay, let's move forward to the last slide of this lecture. We also discussed JavaScript features like dynamic typing, that a variable can hold multiple values, and the variable gets a value at runtime. We also discussed two groupings of data types, that are primitives and non-primitives, with object belonging only to the non-primitive type, and all the 7 others like this are belonging to the primitive types. So that's the end of this lecture, where we have learned to write our first program, and we also did a brief session on variables and JavaScript and data types in JavaScript. All of this content was supported by brief working coding examples to help you people understand the concepts better. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Stay tuned for the next lecture. Then kindly subscribe, like and share this lecture video with the ones who are interested in learning JavaScript for free. Thank you very much.